my car fixed? Yeah. It's the Studebaker. Yeah, the one with the little doggy in the window that goes...
Carol Burnett is known as one of the most beloved figures in American comedy. For over a decade, The Carol Burnett Show made millions of people laugh every week. Her sketches, her physical humor, and her unique warmth made her a household name. But behind all that laughter, there was one moment in her long career that Carol herself could never bring herself to revisit. In 1977, she filmed a sketch for her series that was so raw and so emotionally heavy that she has refused to ever watch it again. Not once in nearly 50 years has she gone back to see it. For most people, this seems surprising, because the episode was praised as brilliant at the time. Critics loved it, audiences were stunned by its power, and Carol even received awards for her performance. Yet for her, it hit too close to home. It stirred up memories of her own struggles and heartbreaks. To understand why this sketch had such a deep effect, we need to look back at Carol's personal story, one filled with hardship, resilience, and an unbreakable will to make people smile despite her own pain. Carol Burnett was born on April 26, 1933. In San Antonio, Texas, her parents loved movies and dreamed of better lives, but they were unable to care for their daughter. Both her mother and father struggled with alcoholism, which made life unstable and painful for Carol from a very young age. Her father could not keep a steady job, and her mother, who also drank heavily, was emotionally distant. Both of them eventually died from alcohol-related problems. As a toddler, Carol already knew what it felt like to be neglected. Instead of bedtime stories or warm hugs, she grew up feeling abandoned. Thankfully, her maternal grandmother, Mabel White, stepped in and took responsibility for raising her. Carol and her grandmother later moved to Hollywood in 1940, but life there was far from glamorous. They lived in a small, run-down boarding house, surrounded by people who were also struggling addicts, mentally ill neighbors, and families barely surviving on welfare. Life was tough, but her grandmother gave her one thing she had never felt before: unconditional love. That love gave Carol the strength she needed to keep going, even when everything around her seemed broken. In the middle of all this hardship, Carol discovered her first escapes fantasy and film. As a little girl, she invented an imaginary twin sister named Karen. Karen was everything Carol wished she could be: confident, beautiful, and fearless. Carol played this role so well that even adults in the boarding house believed Karen was real. She would sneak away, change her hair and clothes, and return as Karen, fooling everyone. It was an early sign of her incredible acting ability. Another escape came in the form of movies. Every Saturday, she and her grandmother went to the cinema, even though tickets took a huge part of their tiny budget. For those few hours, Carol could forget about her real life. On the screen, people laughed, loved, danced, and lived in a world full of color and order. These films inspired her dreams, even as she and her grandmother secretly took toilet paper from the theater bathrooms because they couldn't afford to buy their own at home. One day, while watching a Tarzan film, Carol heard Johnny Weissmuller's famous jungle yell. She practiced it over and over until it became her trademark skill. Later in her career, this silly yell would become one of the audience's favorite parts of her live shows. What began as a child's game was the start of her building the tools that would make her famous. As Carol grew older, she began to dream of becoming a writer, inspired by her mother's unfulfilled dream of journalism. She set her sights on UCLA, but when it came time to pay tuition, she didn't even have the $50 needed to enroll. Just as it seemed impossible, a stranger stepped in. Someone she never identified gave her the exact money she needed, with no strings attached. This small act changed the course of her life. At UCLA, she first studied journalism, but one elective theater class changed everything. On stage, she found her real voice. She was no longer shy or invisible. She was alive, funny, and full of energy. Professors and classmates saw her natural talent immediately, and Carol soon switched her major to theater. Later, another unbelievable act of kindness pushed her even further. At a party, a wealthy man overheard her dream of going to New York but not having the money. He gave Carol and her boyfriend $1,000 each with 3 conditions. Never reveal his name. Only use it to chase their dreams. And, if they succeeded, help others in return. With that, Carol packed up and moved to New York. She had never been further than Texas, but she wasn't afraid. She said later, "I didn't know enough to be scared." This bold leap marked the true beginning of her career. New York was tough, but Carol was tougher. She lived at the Rehearsal Club, a boarding house for young actresses, and worked nights as a hat-check girl while auditioning during the day. Slowly, her opportunities grew. Her first breakthrough came when she performed a comedic song about U.S. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles. It was silly and ridiculous, but audiences loved it. Soon, she was invited onto The Jack Paar Show and later The Ed Sullivan Show. These appearances put her name on the map. In 1959, she landed a starring role in the Broadway musical Once Upon a Mattress, which earned her a Tony nomination. Her performance was so vital that when she left the production, the show closed soon after. Television soon came calling, and she joined The Gary Moore Show, where she learned the magic of live comedy, improvisation, and audience interaction. By the 1960s, she had her own variety special with Julie Andrews, which won major awards. And then, in 1967, The Carol Burnett Show premiered. It became one of the most important comedy shows in television history, running for 11 seasons and winning dozens of awards. Carol had achieved more than anyone thought possible, especially for a woman in comedy at that time. But, beneath all the laughter, one performance in 1977 would bring her back to the heartbreak she had carried her whole life. By 1977, The Carol Burnett Show was at the height of its popularity. Millions tuned in every week, and Carol's comedy sketches became water-cooler conversations across America. But then came an episode that was unlike anything she had done before. In this particular sketch, Carol played a woman who was falling apart emotionally. Instead of pure comedy, the script demanded raw, heartbreaking vulnerability. The audience was not just laughing. They were crying. For many viewers, it was one of her most brilliant performances, showing that she wasn't only funny, but also a deeply gifted, dramatic actress. But for Carol, performing that sketch opened old wounds she had worked hard to bury. The lines, the situations, and even the body language reminded her too much of her childhood, the loneliness, the addiction around her, and the pain of being let down by people she loved. When the cameras stopped rolling, Carol knew she could never watch that performance again. It wasn't because it was bad, it was because it was too good, too close to the bone. Even though critics praised her and awards followed, she admitted that she had locked the episode away in her mind. The laughter of the audience could not erase the tears she felt inside. The pain of that episode hit Carol so hard because, behind the fame, she was living through very personal heartbreak. Her oldest daughter, Carrie Hamilton, was struggling with addiction during her teenage years. Carol, who had already grown up with alcoholic parents, felt like history was repeating itself. She tried everything she could to save Carrie from tough love to rehab programs. In 1988, she even took the brave step of publicly speaking about her daughter's problems, hoping to help other families going through the same thing. The struggles brought sleepless nights and endless worry, even while Carol was making millions laugh on screen. But Carrie eventually turned her life around, becoming an actress, singer, and writer. Mother and daughter became extremely close, working together on creative projects. Tragically, Carrie was diagnosed with cancer in her 30s. She fought bravely, but passed away in 2002. At just 38 years old. For Carol, losing her daughter was the greatest heartbreak of her life. The sketch from 1977 had already been too painful to watch. But after losing Carrie, the connection between her art and her real life became even heavier. That one episode was no longer just a performance. It became a mirror of her deepest losses. While her professional life brought success, Carol also faced battles outside her family. In the 1980s, she found herself at war with the National Enquirer, one of the most powerful tabloids in America. The publication had printed a false story claiming she had been drunk in public and had acted inappropriately. Carol, who had seen what alcoholism did to her parents and knew how such accusations could destroy reputations, decided to fight back. She sued the tabloid for libel, a move very few celebrities dared to make at the time. The legal battle was long and stressful, but Carol eventually won a symbolic victory. The jury awarded her damages, later reduced on appeal, but the case made history. She stood up not only for herself but also for all public figures being harassed by false reporting. For years after, she remained a voice against media bullying. At the same time, she continued to build her career with television specials, movies, and guest appearances. Even as she aged, her passion for performance never left her. Still, the pain from that 1977 sketch stayed locked away, untouched, while she carried on with strength and dignity. Despite the private sorrows and public battles, Carol Burnett's legacy is one of laughter. Her variety show ran for 11 seasons, winning 25 Emmy Awards and countless other honors. She paved the way for women in comedy at a time when very few had center stage. Stars like Tina Fey, Ellen DeGeneres, and Amy Poehler have all said Carol was a role model. In 2005, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and in 2019, the Golden Globes created the Carol Burnett Award in her honor. Given each year to someone who has made outstanding contributions to television, yet when Carol herself reflects on her life, she often talks less about the awards and more about the kindness of others: the stranger who paid her UCLA tuition, the millionaire who sent her to New York, and the fans who kept her going during hard times. And still, when people ask her about the one episode she cannot watch, she answers honestly. She says it was too painful, too personal, and too connected to the wounds she carried inside. For Carol Burnett, laughter was always her gift to the world. But behind it was a woman who knew sorrow better than most. Looking back, it becomes clear why the 1977 sketch continues to stand out in Carol's memory. It was more than just another television moment. It was a point where her art and her real life collided. Comedy had always been her shield, a way to take pain and turn it into joy for others. But this sketch stripped away the shield. It forced her to face the same feelings of abandonment, loss, and brokenness that had shaped her life since childhood. For audiences, it showed a side of Carol they had never seen before. For her, it was a reminder of the scars that never fully heal. That is why she cannot watch it, and perhaps that's also why it remains so powerful. It's a reminder that even the funniest people carry heavy burdens. Carol Burnett's refusal to re-watch that performance is not a weakness. It's a mark of her humanity. She gave the world her laughter, but she also showed, even if just once, the tears behind it. And that makes her story not just one of comedy, but of incredible strength. Carol Burnett is known as one of the most beloved figures in American comedy. For over a decade, The Carol Burnett Show made millions of people laugh every week. Her sketches, her physical humor, and her unique warmth made her a household name. But behind all that laughter, there was one moment in her long career that Carol herself could never bring herself to revisit. In 1977, she filmed a sketch for her series that was so raw and so emotionally heavy that she has refused to ever watch it again. Not once in nearly 50 years has she gone back to see it. For most people, this seems surprising, because the episode